the meaning of the doctor was much more than that.
I failed them, and it was the first exams I've ever failed in my life.
Everybody's just as smart as you. And
when I was going through difficulties at uni, I had to...
And you get a bit of a reality check.
I don't want it to be a case of it causes problems.
Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in today. I'm very excited to present you a guest who's a doctor coming up from London. He'll be providing a lot of wisdom, a lot of insight about some of the exciting things that are coming over the horizon, some things to look out for in 2025 and beyond, and ways to prep ourselves as a medic and as a doctor and become more than just a medic who creates a global impact. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So yeah, 5 years, 6 years for some people, it's a pretty long time. It's a big portion of their lives, whether it's in the early part of their 20s or even later on for some people. So many things get in the way, whether it's just real life, family situations, setbacks, specifically exam failures. These are all realities that can happen, and it's the kind of stuff that you don't expect. Tell me a little bit about these situations that might have happened to you and how you might have overcome that.
Yeah, so for me, going to medical school had its own challenges each year. For me, I would say that the 2 years that I really struggled were definitely my first year and also my fourth year. First year because of that massive jump from A-levels to studying a university degree. You know, you're kind of left alone. You're independent. Yeah. You're paying for your education at this point. So really, it's up to you whether or not you want to do well or not. For me, I think it was a big ego check because I'd done well in my A-levels, obviously, to get into medicine, and I felt like the man. But I came into medicine in university, and I'm around everyone that's done as well or better in their A-levels too. So now I'm just a regular guy again. And I think sort of adjusting to the independence and also the need to commit yourself to study was definitely like a big adjustment for me. And I remember my first exams, first semester, I failed them, and it was the first exams I've ever failed in my life. So that was a bit of a wake-up call that, oh, this is serious. And I remember doing all-nighters. I think I started revising maybe 10 days to the exam. And that's when I realised, there's a lot of stuff here that I don't know anything about.
It's a reality check, isn't it? It's crazy because you go in there and, you know, you're the biggest in the pond that you came from. And 100%. Then all of a sudden you're in with the big fish. Everybody's just as smart as you. And, you know, you hear of these terms that people label it, whether it's imposter syndrome, whatever. And you get a bit of a reality check. It's a wake-up call. And it's like, wow, like I can't just carry on the way that I thought I could. Of course. It takes a lot of adaptations. You have to, adjust to the new environment that you're in. And so what are some of the reality checks that it brought you?
So I realized that I think for the first time really had to put in effort into studying because of the volume of information that I was having to take in. It wasn't anything that I'd had to do before. And then I also had to really understand about my way of learning as well. So I was just like just got to memorize the points. But then you realize that there's hundreds of conditions and hundreds of points for all of those conditions. So there's only so much brain power that you have to be able to sort of absorb all of that. Yeah. So for me, I had to sit down and realize that, okay, I have to try and change the way that I learn. I had to learn by sort of like systems and actually thinking, if somebody has pain in their chest, then what sort of structures are in the chest, the heart, the lungs, the rib cage, whatever, what could go wrong with those things, this, that. And that's how I had to sort of like cascade the information to be able to actually process it. And then also I think I realized that, university is one of the hardest things that anyone will have to go through. And it can affect you mentally as well. Just being alone in university, especially for me, a lot of my friends aren't medics. So past third year, they all graduated. I was just by myself for the next 3 years. And it did take a toll on me by fourth year, which was a really difficult year for me. But sort of being able to sort of like self-reflect on and being realistic about the places that you are struggling and knowing where to sort of seek help, actually sharing those things and being open. That was probably one of the biggest things that I took away from my experience in in medical school.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it, it's kind of weird because you can't just expect to do great by using one particular method. As you mentioned, you have to think outside the box. You have to think in systems and the different cascades that come with it. And so it takes a lot of trialing and error, experimenting, different methods, try things out, hear what the next person's doing. Which of the methods that you tried throughout medical school, revision-wise, really helped you the most?
Oh God! So for me, question banks saved me.
Yeah.
I think that for me, it's hard to really stay engaged during lectures. I need to be sort of like an active participant in what's going on, and I think that going through question banks and having to read information, have a set of answers, pick one, right or wrong, see the explanation, understand and sort of digest that. Active recall, flashcards. I used to be very much like I'll write my notes and then just read over them again. But actually having to challenge your brain to see if you actually remember the information, and then also had to utilize the people around me.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's people that know more than you do. There's people that can approach things from a different perspective that you haven't considered. Like Red Bull and Pro Plus is not the way forward. You've got your people around you, and it's okay to ask for help. People look at it as a competition. I don't really, because I feel like we're all going to pass the finish line. The same way we're all going to be doctors at the end of it. So we should just sort of like help each other on that journey. But those three things I would say is what definitely got me over the hurdle.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned at the end of the day we're going to be doctors. It's very kind of, this discussion is very palpable within medical school, and it's the theme around how it's not just enough to just pass these exams and then become a doctor these days. There's a lot more that goes into it now. People are going above and beyond, trying loads of different things. And so do you think now the definition of medical school, where the hardest part is actually getting in, has completely changed now?
Most definitely. So I started medical school in 2013 and I graduated in 2019. And I think the state of medicine at the time when I started and the time when I finished, and even the time a year into my job, changed drastically. Whereas I think in the beginning stages, going to different sort of like specialties was kind of the thing to do. And then quite early on in medical school, it seemed like a lot of the focus was being pushed out to primary care. So then GP maybe became a bit more lucrative. But then by the time I graduated, and then, I graduated obviously into like COVID sort of year.
Yeah, of course.
And then you realized that, this system isn't really built to handle this at this point in time. And you as a doctor sort of have to be aware of the fact that, okay, I have this clinical work here to do, but there is a wider picture here as well. Yeah. There's elements to this that are above what we can do on the ward. And there's also other areas where your skills as a doctor can be useful outside of the hospital. Because when I think back to COVID times especially, all I can think of is that, okay, cool, I'm an F1, F2 at this time. I'm doing what I can do on the ward, which is very limited based on my experience at that time. But there's people that are making decisions that will affect and directly impact what is going on in this hospital, how well this hospital is prepared for these situations, what we do next, what lessons we take away from this, and how we adapt that to the future so that maybe we're not in this predicament again. And those places for me is where doctors that have especially gone through the groundwork can be of assistance as well. So there's multiple areas where you as a doctor can be useful, not just on the ward, not just in the hospital, not just in the GP clinic, like in policy, legislation, operations, pharmaceuticals, tech, everything. There's so many avenues that you can be useful as a doctor, and that can directly tie back into the hospital, the ward, the GP clinic.
And that list you mentioned is constantly growing. That horizon is just stretching out Like it's insane, and I'm going to touch upon that later on. But I wanted to go back. Was it COVID that kind of gave you that wake up call and realized that it's the role of a doctor in terms of the information you give outside of the hospital, outside of the ward that you're assigned to? That the meaning of a doctor is much more than that.
Yes. So I think that for me, COVID was sort of this realization that, we do a lot of good work as doctors, work that can't be done by anyone else. And strangely, I am grateful that I went through that experience because I think I got to see medicine, I think, at the height of its sort of ability, or the NHS anyway, at the height of its ability to be able to even cope and manage with the pandemic. But what I also realized during that time was that the public also can gain from being educated about things that are going on.
Yeah.
There's a role for doctors in, being able to educate the public, to take a bit of ownership for their own health, to put them in the best position for things like this, know what to do. Because at that point in time where our resources were so stretched, a lot of people were sort of left to fend for themselves with very little information. And for me, I noticed that if we, I think as doctors, I'm almost, but if we're more open with the information and we put the power back in information, I feel like sometimes we hold on to information like it's a secret cult, almost.
Yeah.
But if we're more open with the information and we put the power back into the general public's hands, that inadvertently helps us do our job better, in a way. But I think that what I did find upsetting was that I didn't see much change post-COVID. So it was in a way that I felt like a lot of the practices that, we sort of took into COVID, we continued them afterwards and didn't really address enough of the areas that I think, left us a bit short-handed. And obviously it was difficult through that time. I feel like there are things that, could be done. For example, staffing hospitals appropriately, I think is, number one thing that we could do. Just giving us the necessary resources, because a lot of the difficulty boils down to just not enough resources, and unfortunately, it has led to doctors and nurses feeling like they need to strike to get those things changed, which isn't a nice thing to see. But unfortunately, it's sort of gotten to that point where that's the only way they feel like or we feel like our voices can be heard.
And long gone are the days now where doctors are seen as these like mystical entities that are so out of reach until you're in their hands. And now we're moving into a world where patients have a lot more power in terms of the knowledge, as you said, they have access to, even their own patient notes and their results and everything like that. And it brings me on to this. So someone like yourself who goes into the whole influencer world, who likes to share their experiences of being a doctor on social media, you gain a lot of traction through it. And so tell me a little bit about that in terms of your sort of vision in becoming a figure who is, accessible to the public.
Okay, great question. So, I mean, for me, I would say that my initial intention, I guess, wasn't to become that figure. I was sort of just sharing a bit about my experiences, just because I genuinely just thought people might find it a bit interesting. And then as the traction sort of gained, and I was realizing there was like a relatability from it, then it made me feel like I, in a way, have a bit of a responsibility to try and put out very like meaningful sort of content that can educate and empower, people. But I like to do it in a way where, like, I don't want to be a doctor and then Jermaine, sort of. Right. I'm Jermaine first, who is a doctor. So I like to make sure that side of me comes out, that that, okay, yes, this is a doctor, but they're also a person. They're not a robot. They have things that they like to do. I like to travel. I like to listen to music. I like, chilling with my friends and my family or whatever. But I can also give you this information, and hopefully in a way that it resonates with you and you can understand it. And it's very simple, and it's not like I'm speaking another language. I feel like all of us, to be fair, as doctors, have a responsibility to do that, whether it's in social media or in the clinic or just around our family when we're giving them information. We should all be able to give that information in that sort of way, and I genuinely do feel like people value that.
And being a person, a medical authority, do you feel as though utilizing social media as a platform to reach not just 20, 30 people, but thousands, 30,000, million people, is something that is within our sort of obligation to help people? Because at Medic Launch, one of the biggest incentives we have is to nurture students who can make a global impact, go beyond their title, go beyond the hospital that they're allocated to, but help people who they would have never met if it was a generation ago. So with this new world of social media, how can this be beneficial?
So I think we have to look at the way that people consume information now. I know, if I'm saying personally, during COVID, I stopped watching the news, and a lot of my intake was from, say, Twitter. If I wanted to see a news update, I'll go to Twitter. A lot of people now, they'll be on Instagram, they'll be on TikTok, obviously still Twitter as well, Facebook. People consume information on social media, not really through posters in their GP surgery or posters in A&E or a leaflet through their door. Like, that's quite a archaic and old-fashioned way of getting out information. I think people like to be able to access information easily, and one of the easiest ways to do it is on social media as well. And the good thing about social media is that you can, like you said, reach millions of people from the comfort of your home, if your content is relatable and useful and seen as sort of like valuable enough. And we sort of have to go to where the people are, the people that we want to reach. We have to go to where they are, and they just happen to be on social media, consuming other content. But then it's an avenue for us to input those sort of like tidbits in between the, I don't know, videos of cats or this dance trend on TikTok or whatever. We can put in a bit of something that can really value your life. Like, for example, I know that I did a video about like sickle cell, and I know that sickle cell, from my experience in hospital, is quite poorly understood by a lot of medical professionals, just because there's just not that much emphasis on it when we're taught it, and unfortunately that can lead to substandard care for the patient at the end of the day. And also information about like just giving blood and the ability to give blood if you are or aren't sort of like a sickle cell carrier, or if you are suffering from sickle cell. And I realized that a lot of people found that useful because they didn't know certain things, and ultimately it benefits the patient, but inadvertently it also benefits the people that treat the patient. So it's really good for us to be able to get that information out.
Yeah, fantastic. And on that note, I wanted to kind of just hop over to a different kind of aspect. And so, being a medical student myself, I live with loads of medics, and I'm constantly around medics, particularly in Manchester when the cohort's so huge. There's a constant talk, though, about how we should be doing more as medical students. I kind of spoke about it before, but no longer is it the case of just, you're in medicine now just pass the exams and become a doctor. It's now, what can I do as a medic now? What can I do in years 3, 4, and 5 to, expand and become bigger and more, a more sort of well-rounded doctor, if you will. So what kind of things proactively, just as a layperson, can a doctor, a medical student even do whilst they're studying?
Oh. Well, I'll say there's a lot more things that you can do now. For example, this, like you're doing. So you could do this. Medical students can. I think that content is a big thing. So either putting out their own content or maybe even writing content for other things. Contributing to like publications, research, audits. Even I've heard people be like sort of I guess sort of medical advisors, but on a very low scale for like maybe startups, because the thing that may go understated is that the information that you know is very valuable to a lot of people, even at year 3, 4, 5. You know a lot of specialized information which companies don't know, and just by you being involved in that, you can answer a lot of questions just like that can just, you know, levitate and accelerate that company getting to where they want to get to. And there's value in that. Unfortunately, you're not told that as much as you probably should be, because what our focus is for us in medical school is to be a clinical doctor that either works on the ward in surgery, medicine, or in a GP clinic, or maybe psych.
Yeah.
Those are sort of the options that are more presented to you. And I don't think that that's at fault of the medical school per se. I do think that at the end of the day, our life is our responsibility. The information is out there. We have to go and find out. We have to be willing to have conversations with people that maybe we wouldn't typically have conversations with to find out this information.
Right.
We have to be willing to go to conferences, to network, to go on LinkedIn, reach out to people. Just having conversations, I feel, can get you to so many places that you wouldn't even realize it. And that will give you the information that you can then bring back to platforms like this and feed back to the people to let them know that, hey, you know what, you can actually do this. Or they're actually looking for doctors to do this. Did you know that that doctors are doing this? And then it just broadens your horizon as to what your capabilities are. And I feel like in this day and age, going down just the classical route is almost shorting yourself of your abilities and the opportunities. Obviously, if that's what you want to do, that's absolutely fine. But with the world growing in like tech and pharma and just all of these developments, there's so many things that doctors can do, so many ways that you can impact on patients and really help people that may not be in those typical locations, but you can really, really help. You can help other doctors help those patients. There's so many things that you can do. And I just think that one thing I always say is just be as open as possible. Think laterally and try new things. Take all the opportunities that come your way, at least consider them, look into them. That's why I'm here, for example. You know, just because I took a chance and it paid off.
And just to add to that, what does that really yield? What does that open the doors to? Because I feel like some people know why they're doing these things, why they do these extracurricular things, but some people don't really understand what the point of it is, mainly because they don't understand, you know, what the purpose is, what it can lead to. And so for these people, what can you tell them?
I think I might answer this in a bit of an unorthodox way.
Okay.
But, so, you know, everyone can have a plan. And, you know, if we take, for example, like the classical medical school route, you go to medical school 5, 6 years, do your 2 foundation years, you pick what specialty you want to go into, you do either, you know, core surgical training, or you do intermediate medical training or whatever, and then you go and then become a registrar and become a consultant, and then boom, that's a planned sort of route. Now, for you to get into these other things, you may have a more unorthodox sort of route. But I think that if you focus too much on things going as planned, and I think that because of the way we go through education, we become quite regimented. You know, you could map out the next 20 years of your life. Let's say if you wanted to be a gastroenterology consultant, you could probably map out the next 20 years of your life year on year and know that if you pass your exams at this point and interviews go fine for you, this is where you'll be at this point in time. But if you want to go down another route, then things aren't going to go exactly the way that you might want it to go. You know, you have to sort of fall in love a little bit with the journey, enjoy each aspect on the way, and don't feel any sort of resentment that, you know, you're at this point now, because it's the grind and the graft that you're putting into that. And if you're doing that to the best of your ability, then you don't know where it could take you. And I'm a advocate for I'm a big advocate for the unknown sort of ceiling. I feel like there's a ceiling that you know and there's a ceiling that you don't know. Now, for me, I'm doing the job that I'm doing at the moment, which I'm sure we'll probably get into later. And I don't necessarily know what I'm exactly going to be doing next year. I know what I would like to be doing, but you know, even if you asked me, say, a month ago, oh, I didn't know I was going to be here doing this podcast.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's things that are happening on the way to where I probably will go to that I'm enjoying on the way. And I don't know where it could lead to, but it excites me and it interests me more than knowing like, oh yeah, cool, you can do this and by year 10, this is where you'll be.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's too predictable for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I feel like that's kind of my personality too.
There's beautiful words right there. Enjoy the journey. I quite like it when people promote that way of living. It's in general, whether you're a medic or not. And so, from the medical perspective, how can you recommend students to enjoy the journey more when they're on their placements, when they are, undergoing exams and everything's happening at once, and then they have to think of the application process and then what they want to do 5 years down the line? How can we, forget about that for a second and then just pause and then, look at the journey that we're making?
Well, I mean, I think that you almost have to take pleasure in the things that aren't necessarily pleasurable. So, for example, whilst you're on placement, there's two ways that you could approach placement. You could look at it like, okay, cool, I'm going to come here and I'm going to just follow the senior around, registrar, F1, F2, whatever. I'm going to write some notes down. I'm going to just do exactly what they say. And if they don't tell me to do anything, I'm just going to sit in the corner on my phone. And I'm going to try and go home as soon as possible. Or you could really try and integrate yourself into that team. You could ask for opportunities like, oh, let's say you're working in surgery. Oh, is there any interest in operations that I could see? Is there any ways that I could maybe assist? Can I go and see this? Can I be part of this audit? Can I be part of this research publication? Like, I know personally someone that just recently graduated that, throughout their medical school, I think they managed to get about 5 publications before graduating, plus like a intercalated degree as well, and launching multiple ebooks and creating a business on the side whilst
it's really maxed out, isn't it?
Yeah, but the thing is, all of that information that they were able to gain is purely from just really integrating themselves into what medical school wanted them to do anyway. Nothing more. It's not like they weren't necessarily going out and doing things outside of what was required. They were just doing the things that were required in the best possible way to be able to get the best possible output. And you can't get around hard work. You can choose to work hard or you can choose to not work hard, but the outcome will be the outcome for you. And that's what I mean by enjoying the journey. Now, granted, I know our time is very limited in what we can and can't do, but if we're able to balance and really be efficient, I guess, with our time in the things that we are doing, then you'll reap the rewards of it. If you take the mick with revising, you're not going to get good results. You work hard, likelihood is you're going to get good results. So I think that's what I would say. And then also, like I said before, just be open to things that align with your schedule and don't impact on the things that you sort of need to do to get through to the next level.
So Medic Launch is a podcast that is aimed and catered towards all. It's an inclusive platform that allows students to better themselves every single day. They can use the question banks that are available to continually improve on their weaknesses, on their skills, and also some podcasts which will provide some fantastic insights, some knowledge gems, and just some entertainment as well that's provided. As well as this, we have a vision of allowing students to reach a huge impact, a global impact. We want to redefine ourselves from more than just a medic, someone who's assigned to just a hospital ward and that's it. No, we want medical students to reach thousands and millions of people and really stretch that definition as to what is a doctor. openness and a willingness to be involved and just commit 100% to whatever it is, even the most menial tasks that you can get given. Through university, through medical school, I know many medical schools now offer it in the UK, and it's the opportunity to undertake medical electives and travel the world or go to particular parts of the world where it doesn't work in the same way as it does back home. And so how can, for a well-traveled man like yourself, how can you really utilize that experience to become a more broadly thinking medic?
So, I mean, I guess me personally, I haven't actually been able to do elective abroad.
Right.
But I think that you can gain a lot of insight about how medicine is practiced differently in other countries, even just by speaking to doctors. You don't necessarily have to typically work there. Like, okay, for example, one time I was in Dubai, and me and my friend were just at a beach club, and a guy just came over to me. We started talking, and I found out that he was a doctor that had moved from Birmingham to Dubai and set up like a aesthetics clinic out there. He was like a core surgical trainee for a bit, and then he moved out there and did all of this stuff. And for me, just by having that conversation, I was able to learn that, oh, you can do that if you chose to do that. For example, there is an avenue to do that. And that's all information that maybe even if it's something that I'm not going to do myself, if I know somebody that's interested in doing that, that's information that can help them be like, oh, I don't have to do X, Y, Z, or it's possible for me to do X, Y, Z. I just think if you're able to understand how things work elsewhere, it does help you, one, also appreciate how things work here. Because whilst the NHS isn't perfect, there are loads of good things about the NHS that if we were to, if you were to leave here, you would notice those things. There are inadequacies in every system. No system is perfect. But if you're able to like really appreciate what it is that we're able to do here, then I feel like if you are working within the NHS, you'll be able to sort of give it the level of respect that I think it deserves. Like I said, the NHS isn't perfect, but I think that it's definitely one of the best healthcare systems in the world. And I think we should be very grateful that we do actually have access to it as well.
So, AI, health tech, pharma, we hear of this so much, even if you don't care to talk about it. As a medic, it's looming over the horizon. People have started to employ it on themselves, on their day-to-day practice as a doctor. And so explain it to me and explain to thousands of these medics that are listening. What on earth is going on? What's changing? We're entering some new world right now.
Okay. So I'll put my hands up. I'm not an expert in this field. But it has been something that I've taken more interest in over this past year. So I look at AI in more of like a supportive sort of aspect for doctors. A lot of the, I think, misconception with AI is probably the level of what AI can do. I think we watch things like, let's say like Black Panther, and you see someone go into like a chamber and this robot does their whole surgery in and out, and then boom, no human input at all. And I think that sometimes is the perception that we have of AI, but in reality, that's probably not what AI is able to do. Definitely not at this point. Like I said before, AI supports doctors in being able to make their jobs easier. So for me, where I see AI really excelling is in things like making administrative tasks easier for doctors, if that is recording a consultation or helping to write notes or helping to write reports, just sort of streamlining those processes and making them easier. But the thing is that at this point in time, there's always going to be the human aspect of a doctor included with the AI, and those two work in tandem with each other, not one trying to take over the other. I think a lot of times there's an issue with trust with AI, especially in medicine, because I think people assume that AI will be allowed to sort of work independently. And from what I know at this point in time, that isn't the case, that AI is working independently of a human doctor, because there are things that maybe AI can't do or can't consider that a doctor can, based on their medical knowledge. So I think at this point in time, there shouldn't be too much fear around AI, because it's always going to have the input of a medical doctor. And I'd be very surprised if that changes, but we never know.
I'll hold you to that one. I'm playing. So, what can a medical student do to prepare for this new change? How can they equip themselves with the necessary skills that are required to keep up with this tool? Because, as far as I see at the moment, it can be a very useful tool. And I do agree that it's only at this moment in time, it's only as smart as what we give it. And so, what can they do in this? What can we do in this moment in time?
I think we need to. You have to learn about it. I feel like if we're looking at sort of like the progression of AI, it's only going to become sort of smarter and smarter and able to do more and more and more. If you choose to ignore it, then you will make your life a lot more difficult in the future, because it will be integrated into certain things. It's already being integrated into certain specialties, hospitals, processes, and whatever. You could choose to be old-fashioned, but let's say if AI is able to allow you to see 10 more patients in a day, then ultimately that benefits those patients. They're able to get that consultation quicker. It makes your job easier as well, in terms of you not needing to do things. For example, I know that I had to do a few months ago. I had to do a presentation about breast cancer awareness for a friend's company. And I remember I went and sat down in the cafe and I was like, okay, cool. I've blocked out 4 hours to just put together this presentation. Let's sort of get into it or whatever. But I'd heard about this AI thing that could help me do a presentation. I was like, let me give it a try. So I just put in the prompt, can you make a roughly 10 to 20 minute presentation about breast cancer awareness for lay people, detailing this and that and this and that and this and that. I promise you, within 5 minutes, presentation done. And then maybe let's say I took another 10, 15 minutes just to make sure that everything was good. So that 4 hours turned to 20 minutes.
That's insane.
Exactly. And then I'm able to do other things with my day. Now, if I chose to just be ignorant and like, oh no, AI is such a bad thing, I don't want anything to do with AI, I've got to do it myself, blah, blah. Who am I kidding? Like, why would I do that to myself? Do you get what I'm saying? So I feel like, especially as medical students, before you're even going into the field of medicine, I think it's good to sort of like familiarize yourself with them. And who knows, even identify places where AI might be useful when you're doing your placements. If you look at something, you're like, either my seniors are complaining about this a lot, or I feel like this could be done better. That could be an idea. Could be something that could be a business plan for you. Could be something that could really benefit the whole hospital system. Like I said, there's many ways for you to help. It's not only in the clinical way. You can help doctors help patients. You can help nurses help patients. You can help patients help themselves. You can help patients help doctors. There's so many avenues, but I think that we don't all the way consider those. There's so many ways that you can be of assistance, and I think that AI is just one of those things that is a tool that you can use to help ultimately.
So, Jermaine first, doctor second. What kind of a difference have you noticed that makes in your approach to patients?
So I think that, as you can tell, I'm quite a light-hearted, I'm quite a chill person.
Sure, yeah.
I think a lot of my thing is to make myself seem as approachable as I am. I think sometimes, especially patients, can look at the doctor title and maybe find that an intimidating sort of thing to approach. But I kind of very rarely introduce myself as Dr. Egbunike. I would say that my name's Jermaine, and I'm the doctor that's looking after you today. And even when I sort of put out information or put out content, I don't hide like my mannerisms, like the way that I speak, or because so initially when I started in medicine, I used to code switch a lot.
Right.
So like the way I talk now, if I was say calling up, I don't know, the radiologist or speaking to like a colleague at work, my whole voice would change completely, and I didn't even notice myself doing it until like further on in my time as a doctor.
Yeah.
But I realized that, at the end of the day, this is the information that's being delivered. It's being delivered and it's the right information. Who cares what I sound when I'm delivering that information? And then I feel like it just makes me a bit more relatable because, obviously I come from London. Like I said, not many of my friends are doctors, but that doesn't mean that people around me don't want to be doctors. But they might look at it and say, oh, but there's not people like me in that field, so maybe I'm not sort of like welcome there. And I definitely had that imposter syndrome when I first started because I didn't feel like I could see people around me that were like me. But I definitely feel that I've noticed and I've had conversations with medical students, by putting out the content that I've put out, I've been able to show them that, yeah, you can be the way you are, you can get into medicine this way, or even patients that want to sort of absorb the information, maybe because I seem like, I guess, a regular guy, and I don't try and hide that, and I think it's good for us to seem regular. They're able to sort of just take that information in and really understand it. And I never thought that I necessarily liked teaching per se, and I never looked at my content as like teaching, but I guess in a way it kind of is, but very just broken down, simplified, so that you can digest it very easily and get rid of all the jargon, basically. So I can only imagine that, from what I've spoken to you about, that seems to be what they like about it. So
Yeah, for sure. And with the content that you deliver, it provides a great educational basis. But at the same time, with these platforms, there is an element of being able to engage the audience as well.
Of course.
Provide an element of entertainment. And so is there a fine line that you have to tread as a medical practitioner, being a creative as well, where you have to balance the entertainment aspect and the getting yourself in trouble aspect?
100%. So, yeah, I think I definitely learned that lesson quite early on. So I know that when I first started putting out content, I was purely putting out holiday content because that's what I enjoyed doing. I didn't really want to put out any work content just because I didn't think people would be interested in it. And I didn't see anybody doing it in the way that I felt resonated with me. But through some encouragement and a couple of examples that were sent to me, I realized that there was a way that I could put out content that was authentic to me. But as I said, I'm quite a light-hearted person, and I can be quite comical. So I know that when I initially put out content about work, even though it did well, I think that there was a line that maybe I stepped on a bit too much, where it was a bit too comical,
Right.
maybe a bit too light-hearted, and then I sort of realized that, maybe that's not the best way to put out this information, or even though it might be received well by a lot of people, I don't want it to be a case of it causes problems professionally for me, and it almost did at a point, where obviously a video I did, it went quite wide, and then it came across, my employer's desk at work, so yeah. Obviously conversations were had, and fortunately it didn't go anywhere too far, but it was sort of like a wake-up call for me to just be like, okay, cool, let's just be a bit careful about how we put out the information. And I think that now if I'm speaking about like an experience that I've had in the hospital, I try to use it as like a teachable moment. I don't want it to be purely entertainment. I do want it to be entertaining because obviously I do want you to watch it, but at the same time, I want you to be able to learn something from it. I know me and you have spoken about like the video I did about a patient that came in after doing balloons and they got neuropathy as a result of it. Now, for me, when I put out that content, it was sort of like a direct call to action to a lot of young people that I'd seen doing balloons, you know, even family friends of mine, cousins, things like that. And when I put out that content, it definitely resonated with a lot of young people because I had so many of them messaging me, just asking for a bit more information, telling me about their experiences themselves. And for me, that's where I feel like the value is in being able to put out this information, because there's people there that are doing these activities, for example, vapes, balloons, whatever, without understanding what the potential consequences are. And if someone like me is someone that you would listen to, if I talk about these things and I give you the necessary information, you know, I can't force you to do anything, but at least I can make sure you're making an informed decision about what you are doing. Yeah, I think that's the avenue that I try to go down now a lot more, just to make sure that you are taking something of value away from any one of my videos.
Yeah.
Of value away from any one of my videos.
Yeah, no, absolutely fantastic. And when it comes to whether you're, you know, in medical school or you're doing your creative work or whatever phase you're in life, you may have experienced a bit of a rut or a block that you experience, whether it's preparing for your finals or trying to think of what content to make next. You come at kind of like at the end of the road feeling, and you're like, where do I go from now? In terms of this strange experience that I can't even put a name to, do you have any kind of advice?
So I mean, that's something that I'm probably experiencing at the moment.
Oh, wow.
Now, to be honest, because I speak to a lot of creators, not necessarily like medical creators, but just general sort of like creators, and their main advice is really just to keep creating through the creative slump. And the reason that I think that advice is so valuable is because if I sat down and, let's say, for example, you put out to me all of the videos that I have out now, you put out to me before they came out, and I just looked at them and they're all in 0 views, I would never be able to tell you that, oh, that's the one that's going to do numbers, that's the one that's going to resonate the most with people, that's the one that they're going to like the most. I just put them out.
Yeah.
And they did what they did off chance. There's ones that I thought would do well that didn't do well. There's ones that I didn't think would do well that did amazingly, you know. And I think that especially as like a medical content creator, there are so many topics for us to talk about.
Yeah.
If you really sit down, you know, you could just go on NHS. Look at conditions. Like, as in, there's all of these conditions to go about. It's about the way you do it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the content is there for you. It depends on what you want to do with it. You know, like I said, there's a combination of speaking about my personal experiences, speaking about general medical conditions. Just there's such a wide range of things, and I think that again, people now really want to consume a lot of information, and a lot of stuff that you don't even think people want to consume, they do want to hear about, they do want to know about. And I think especially people are taking a more keener interest into the lives of doctors, what it really looks like, especially with us protesting and striking at the moment and things like that. Why are they striking? What does it really look like in the hospital? Yeah. People want to do medicine, but they're wondering like, but is it good to do now? Has it changed? So all of these questions are there and people want the answers to them. And it's up to us to give them the answers because we're living it. Do you get what I'm saying?
Would you say that translates similarly into the academic world when you're experiencing a bit of a study slump? Do you think just keep going?
That's I'll say that that's different. That's definitely different. Yeah, because I think, like I said before, when I was going through difficulties at uni,
Yeah.
I had to sit back and reanalyze the way I was learning and change it to a way that I could actually digest the information, not just reading, bullet points and bullet points and bullet points of conditions and causes and symptoms and blah, blah, all of this stuff, but actually making it into a way whereby I can really digest the information. So I think with studying, definitely I'll say that that's a different thing to creating per se. Yeah, I think it's different.
And when we do reanalyze ourselves and we try to redirect, what are some of the core fundamental questions we want to be asking ourselves when we are constantly making certain mistakes? Or
Ooh, well, I think that as people in general, we're not always as sort of what do you call it, self-reflective. First, we need to sort of look at, okay, why is this thing maybe not going the way that it's going? Is there anything that I could do differently? What am I trying to get out of this thing? And I think you have to just be very specific about, what you want out of what you're doing and what are the avenues that you can do to achieve it. And you also have to just be open to trying out those different avenues because, whilst some things may work, some things may not work, but the things that might work could surprise you. It might not be something that you, and it's always just worth just giving it a go and trying it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so I'm conscious of the time, and so I'm gonna wrap up here, but I don't want to end without kind of asking you a little bit about what's to come. So we're going into 2025 now, and so what excites you about career-wise in terms of the whole vision?
Okay, so I like I said before, I've taken quite an interest into healthcare and tech related things. I've recently completed a health tech fellowship. I'm hoping to go deeper into the space because I feel like where my strengths lie are with innovation and sort of problem solving within the healthcare sort of space, and I feel like I want to put myself in a position where I can be the help that healthcare professionals or patients need that can benefit vice versa.
Yeah.
If you get what I'm saying. Sometimes I feel like we're a bit restricted in the hospital space to advocate for change, but I feel like from outside of the hospital, that's where we can sort of have that time to think and really look at the whole picture and adapt to things. Also, hopefully more traveling.
No, that's for sure.
Some personal goals that I need to wrap up as well. And also some business related things as well. So I would say just keep watching and, fingers crossed.
Stay tuned.
I have good things to show you.
We're just going to wrap up there. And so I'd like to thank you very much, Jermaine. You're someone who's provided some valuable insight and wisdom to our viewers. And I wish you all the best for 2025 and what's to come. And I look forward to staying tuned and seeing what's over the horizon. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Much.